Before you do, imagine. It's 89 degrees at midnight. Felt more like 104 with all those bodies crammed inside that tiny little room at the Stonewall Inn. Stormy DeLavier, a 6'2" mask-presenting black woman, was working the door that night in her usual gig. Motorcycle boots, dungarees, t-shirts, denim jacket, and that stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready attitude. Now, they tried to arrest her for the supposed men's attire that evening. Couldn't do nothing about that attitude, though. That cop clocked her upside her head with a nightstick, and she clocked him right back upside his with her fist, except he was the only one laid out on the ground. And legend has it that that punch set off the uprising that lasted for 3 days. The very reason why we now celebrate Pride on the last Sunday in the month of June. The very reason why we are here, collectively celebrating all of the members of the Rainbow Alphabet Soup diaspora who have come before us. The ones who have paved the way so that the Gabies have the freedoms to thrive in ways that some of us may never. Today, we celebrate. We honor the myriad fallen heroes who have kicked open the doors to every closet, everywhere. Honey, whether it was in stilettos or in combat boots, the children thrived. Now, we can openly watch as RuPaul's Drag Race goes mainstream. We can stand witness as the iconic, the legendary Miss Crystal Abeja's vision of ballroom as international tastemaker comes to fruition. Today, we honor the men, the women, and the gender non-binary humans who have laid down their lives at the feet of a disease which to this day still ravages worst amongst Black and Latinx youth. We herald the ones who came to play here, the ones who found love here, the ones who worked the night here, the ones who laid out coming down from last night's debauchery at sunrise here, the ones who wished and schemed and plotted and fretted for a different life here, the ones who forgave unforgiving parents here, the ones who did any and everything but pray here. Now, let's keep it a buck. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome has stolen away an entire generation of pathfinders, waymakers, trailblazers, icons, visionaries, and sheroes. People like Alvin Ailey, Willie Donnell Smith, Willie Ninja. So many people from the cast of Paris is Burning. Personally, my dear friend Sati Word, my dear friend Anthony Troy Marshall, my former lover and dear friend Kristen Corey Gerard Allen. In fact, the man whose artwork stands here as herald on this day, Keith Haring. There's so many more nameless ones whose souls have come to witness this very moment. This space is their unforgotten eulogy. This is the repast for the families who said that they died of cancer or of pneumonia. This is for the ones who couldn't. This is for the ones who dared. We consecrate this sacred space today in the name of the Orishas, in the name of the Sotenzinjin, in the name of the ancestors, in the name of God, whichever you believe in. For this is a space for all. This is a space for the living. This is hallowed ground, so mote it be. Ashe, ashe, ashe.
Well, you don't want to follow that speaker, do you? It's like, good morning, everybody. What a great day. We are going to do the ribbon cutting before we actually start the program. So our electeds, come up with me and let's officially open AIDS Garden Chicago. Willa, you gonna orchestrate like you usually do? Oh, there we go. No, go ahead, go ahead. Wait, do we have a little, we have, yeah.
Do you want us all on the same, Alderman, you want us all?
Okay.
Okay, we can both do this together.
Okay. Just pause.
No, no.
With our hands on the scissors and just
Well, wait a sec. Let's pause for a moment. Oh, all the people we lost.
Go down, guys.
Okay, let's take a moment of silence. Alrighty. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Should we give this a
Yeah, we did.
And I got it.
Put it in here. How about that? There are way too many people to thank for the result of AIDS Garden Chicago. I know the people will speak of the enormity of the crisis, the response. So I'm going to let that to better speakers than me. But I do want to start by thanking Alpha Wood Foundation, Fred Eichner, Jim McDonough, and of course the Keith Haring Foundation for their beautiful self-portrait. To me, it's a symbol of resilience, to be honest with you. This is what this garden is about, is education, resilience, and making sure that this type of epidemic or crisis never happens again with government indifference for the first 10 years. And I know we got Lori Cannon here, and Tracy Bain. They're much better at articulating it. But those of us that were every day in the just trenches is the right word, and the fact that it spawned a whole generation of leadership in our community, mainly because of government inaction for the first 10 years. Many of us did our pro bono work, our private work, to really provide meals and housing and support and clinics and such. It has become just a real institution on how do we respond to public health crises. And many of the people here have been in the trenches, for, God bless, 40 years. 40 years plus, actually. And it's amazing that we're finally got this tribute to all the people that really lost their lives. You said that of my generation, probably half of our gay men, primarily, but it's women and children too, but lost their lives to indifference and ignorance. And then there's half lost, maybe a quarter of the living are living with HIV. Thank God, with the improvement on drugs and such. But a lot of us a lot of our friends lost their lives with the AZT that was so toxic. That they didn't die of AIDS, they died of all the toxicity of the drugs that were there trying to really save people's lives. But that being said, there's a number of people I want to thank outside of Fred, who's been Fred has been a silent hero in our LGBT community for so many different causes. He has been incredibly silent and strong, and you wouldn't know him walking down the street. He has made such a difference in our Chicago community, and for that matter, Democratic politics nationwide. He is an individual that they don't make them anymore, for sure. The other people we have, there's been community partners, Lori Cannon I mentioned, Owen Keenan and Victor doing oral histories, so you can see with your phone, you can hear the stories of an ongoing library of stories of people that knew firsthand the pandemic or the epidemic and their response to it, and their own stories. We've got Vicky No and John Peller, David Munar, Tico, Valle, Nancy Judah, design workshop gardener designer, Manisha, did a fabulous job. There she is. And people said, who designed this? You know, and thank you. Thank you. I would be remiss for my entire staff, but specifically, Chris Jessup. Where's Chris? Chris has been my go-to person to keep everybody involved and communicate with our board. Obviously, Christy Weber did some finishing touches. You know, anyone who knows Christy says, if you don't include me in this, we'll not be friends anymore. So those of you who know Christy know exactly what I'm talking about. So, Maureen Martino is here promoting it in the neighborhood from our chamber. We have Willa Lang. Well, where's Willa? Willa, there's another. Where's our hero? Yeah. When things were down, just talk to Willa. She'll bring you back up, and she'll make sure the follow-through is done, and look at the follow-through and the results that are here today. Our friends at Rosenthal Fine Arts, where's Dennis and Susan? Dennis and Susan was our original contact with the Herring Foundation, and our self-portrait wouldn't be here sitting along Chicago's beautiful lakefront without their efforts. I mentioned already our Gil Vasquez, the president of and CEO of the Keith Haring Foundation, came in from New York, make sure that he saw this monumental exercise that we have done to create and preserve history for our community. And I can't think of a better backdrop than Chicago's lakefront anywhere in the country. So, that has a lot to do. There's a lot to do with the Park District, the mayor's office. They have been truly supportive of the idea from as early as 2005. And historical-wise, obviously it was mentioned this was a place, like a public gathering space for LGBT, where there were very few places to be out and proud. And this was one of them. And what happened is when the Army Corps of Engineers did the lakefront revetment project, there was a hue and a cry about, oh my God, we can't lose the rocks and the history there. What we did was we preserved the cornice of the new revetment with the original rocks, and of course we have a lot of greeting rocks around for conversation circles. And my gut tells me as this thing matures, we'll probably see some of the graffiti art on the stones that were part of the original rocks, but that's that would be in Keith Haring fashion, right? So our leaders, obviously our Governor Pritzker's done a great job, shepherding some of the final grant monies to make this a reality. It's somewhere to the tune, I think, of a 1.4 million that was brought in at the to make the dream a reality. It'd been on the books. It'd been on, it had been designed, but if it wasn't for Governor and of course leader Greg Harris, let's give Greg. Where's Greg? Greg, fantastic. My senator Sarah Feigenholz. She's the queen lesbian of the community. Everyone knows that. So, but there you are. A 1.5, okay. And it's gathering interest, so it's going to get even more. Obviously, Mike Quigley, our congressman, could not be with us today, but he's been a soldier on this, on AIDS funding, and whether he was at the county, whether he was at, and now in Congress, and he's doing the good work in Washington. Our newest state rep, Margaret, you've been champion to get us over the finish line. We really appreciate it. Margaret Croak. Where's Yoni? Yoni is our president of our board, our former state rep. Yoni, my friend. Speaking of the board, we have Yoni and Willa. Jim McDonough, Sidney Thomas has been a great addition to the board. We've got a lot more work to do. This is the beginning. This is a community project. This is something that the canvas is set. It's almost 3 acres, but the programming, the history, the cultivation, we're doing community garden here. There's still more work to be done. So those that want to make sure they want to stay tuned, not only we need to raise money, again, because there's a fairly large maintenance budget, but please stay to our website, AIDS Garden Chicago. We need your help to carry this on, not just in memory of all those we lost, but for those that moving forward, just to understand the educational component that is really, really part of our future. And we really want to make sure people of all stripes and all orientations understand what happened the last 40 years, what will not happen again if we do the right work and educate our youth and make sure that there's safe spaces for everyone, regardless of their orientation, so they can be the full person that they can be, to make sure that they're going to be the best members of society, that are LGBT or questioning or whatever the term is, we treat each other alike and with respect. That's how we're going to move this city and our country forward together. And with that, I'm going to, I have the honor to introduce our mayor, Mayor Lightfoot. Mayor and I have worked together for many years prior to her being mayor, but more importantly, as her 3 years plus, I think at this point, her tenure as our leader, she has been an advocate for the underserved historically, which includes the LGBT community. So it is just an honor to have her here today, to have a lesbian mayor at this time with this AIDS Garden groundbreaking. I couldn't think of a better person to introduce. So, Mayor Lightfoot, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, we've got to give it up for Tom Tunney. This doesn't happen without Tom's diligence, determination, and real commitment. He's not a guy that seeks out the headlines, but he's a guy that gets stuff done. And this, I think, will be a lasting memory and legacy for him. So, Tom, thank you so much for everything you've done. You know, as the kids say, let me also double-click on all the other folks who've contributed to this effort. Our great governor, our lieutenant governor, Sarah Feigenholtz, Yoni, Margaret. I also want to acknowledge Kevin Morrison, who is here. This really is an incredible labor of love. I want to thank Park District Superintendent Rosa Escarino and the entire team here. As Tom said, the work isn't done. More will be required to make sure that this isn't just a nice respite, that we tell the history of gay Chicago here in this hallowed ground. So more work to be done there. The AIDS Garden Chicago is now our city's first public park that memorializes the early days of Chicago's HIV epidemic and honors those lost and those who continue to fight this disease today. With this park now officially complete, residents and visitors can gather here to learn about the HIV epidemic along the education walk. They can sit among the ginkgo tree grove, which is planted all around us, and reflect on the impact of HIV has on the lives of our community. They're also planting beds in a healing garden that provide an opportunity for community members to come together and garden, one of my favorite activities. And of course, it can sit alongside Keith Haring's iconic self-portrait sculpture and enjoy the sun rays while reminiscing about the Belmont Rocks. The historic Belmont Rocks was a beloved place for our city's local gay and lesbian community to gather and be themselves from the 60s through the 90s. And I personally came here for the very first time after my first Pride Parade back in the 80s. I came to Chicago in the mid-80s, trying to find my own place in this world while not yet living openly. And after coming out in law school, I found my identity in this city, and this spot really means a lot to me personally. The first time I came here, as I said, was after a Pride Parade, and I was amazed to see that really what felt like a sea of diverse, beautiful humanity that was sitting here, hanging out, dancing, playing music, barbecuing. I'd never seen or experienced anything like that before, and it gave me a sense of assurance that I was making the right decision by coming out and embracing who I was, something I'd known since I was a child, but finally having the courage to say, this is who I am, this is a life I'm going to lead, and I'm never going to look back. I'm always going to look forward with incredible pride. And so it's with incredible humility and honor to be here 2 decades later, since the removal of the rocks and my first time here, that we immortalize him here in this AIDS garden, Chicago. And just as I have fond memories of this beautiful place, I also have horrific ones living through the height of the AIDS epidemic. I felt like I was a kid watching things unfold. I was pretty young, in my teens and then in my early 20s, really at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And probably the thing I remember most about that horrific time was being in New York at the Pride Parade and watching New York active go by in the parade procession and chant, how many more have to die? How many more have to die? I will never forget the feeling that I had, the feeling I have now, which is chills, but also feeling like helpless. How could this be happening? And the government was ignoring how this was devastating our community, and particularly gay men, all across the country. And the level of hatred that we heard being spewed by people, that this was God's will, that he was invoking his wrath on us because of our lifestyle. Well, things are different, but some things are not. The things that are different, as Tom said, is we're never, ever going to let this happen again. And I can tell you, through our Department of Public Health, we have been stalwart fighters to make sure that resources and medicines and education continues to be available all throughout our community, and particularly in those communities now hardest hit by the ravages of this disease, which is still very much part of our present, and that is in Black and Brown Chicago. CDPH's effort to combat HIV centers on two overarching objectives outlined in the state of Illinois' Getting to Zero plan. First, our first objective is in continuing programming that supports people living with HIV so they can lead long, happy lives. Second, we are laser focused on reducing new HIV transmissions through treatment and pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP. These approaches taken together will lead us, finally, to the end of this epidemic. And additionally, we are strategically investing our resources to accelerate the progress. With more than $40 million in funding this year, we have implemented a portfolio of programs that prioritize residents who are most impacted by HIV, specifically our Black and Latinx residents on the South and the West Sides. I also want to give a shout out to Howard Brown, who's been an incredible partner with us on this work. For those of you who don't know, Howard Brown just isn't on the North Side in Boys Town. They are expanding all over the city, and they are incredible partners with the Department of Public Health in making sure that we're bringing necessary education, resources, and supportive services to residents all over our city who need it most. So thank you so much, Howard Brown, for everything that you do. I'm also proud to say that Chicago was the first jurisdiction in the country to move to a status-neutral approach, meaning that residents, regardless of their HIV status, have access to the same services for mental health care, substance use disorders, and supportive housing. That's a big step. Moreover, we created one of the first housing programs for Black and Latinx gay and bisexual men who are HIV negative and use PrEP. Since the launch of this program in 2019, all participants in the program have remained HIV negative. And again, we have much more work to do. You can clap for that. But I also want to say this. I want to echo what Tom said and thank Fred Eichner. Fred has been an incredible supporter of this community, incredible supporter of democratic causes both here in Chicago, Illinois, and really across the country. He's not a guy that seeks out publicity or fame. I won't even point him out because he's kind of lurking in the shadows. But Fred, I want to say thank you on behalf of so many people whose lives you don't know, but whose lives you have made better because of your commitment to resources and making sure the advocacy groups have the funding that they need. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I also want to say thank you one and all to each of you. Last thing, many of us know this fight continues. Many of us are aware that the draft opinion issued by the Supreme Court has our name all over it. We have to be ready. We have to be prepared. And we cannot think that ending Roe only affects straight white women. The fundamental premise of Roe, which is the right to privacy, directly impacts the rights that we have now been able to enjoy, the right to marry, the right to have children, so many other things that are connected to who we are that we take for granted as a community are at risk when Roe falls. So be ready, folks. Support the advocacy groups, whether it's Lambda, whether it's NAACP, ACLU, Equality Illinois. We need to be ready and not let things happen to us. And just to underscore the point, when they're attacking trans children, folks, that should tell you the fight is coming to our doorstep, and we absolutely can't sit this one out. We've got to be ready. We are lucky in this city and in this state that we have our rights intact and they're not directly threatened. But our brothers and sisters in our community all around the Midwest and the United States, particularly in southern states, Chicago has to remain a beacon of hope and light for each and every one of them. So as we celebrate Pride Month, we celebrate the things that we have gained. We also need to make sure that we're reaching out our hands in friendship to so many in our community across the country who are under threat and siege every single day by right-wing, unhinged, lunatic governors, state legislatures, and others who want to strip us of our rights for political sport. We've got to stand up loud and proud and say, no, we're not going back, not in this time. We will not let this happen. And ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who has been an ally for our community from day one and continues to be sitting in the governor's seat, and that's our great governor, Governor J.B. Pritzker. Governor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you so much, Mayor, for the weather. And we have powerful mayors in the city of Chicago.
You aldermen too. You're getting there, right?
I was getting there, yes. There's an old expression about, the congressman is the guy the alderman wanted to send out of town. That's how powerful aldermen are. And this is a powerful alderman, so I thank you very much for the weather as well. Thank you very much, Tom. It is really an honor to be here today, a very meaningful honor and a meaningful day to spend with all of you. I not only want to thank Alderman Tunney for hosting this, but you've heard some of these names, but Fred Eichener, once again, just one of the tremendous lights of this great city who continues to stand up for those who have been left out and left behind, for those who need a champion, and who stays always behind the scenes just doing the right thing. Thank you, Fred. Thank you. To every organizer who has made AIDS Garden Chicago possible, thank you for all the amazing work that you've done. I'm grateful, of course, to Leader Greg Harris and to all of the representative senators in Springfield who represent this area, and those who voted for this who don't represent this area. They deserve our thanks, but a special thank you to Senator Sarah Feigenholtz, to our great representative Margaret Croak, to Commissioner Morrison, thank you. To Alderman Smith, I don't know if Alderman Smith is here, but I want to thank her as well for her support. And also to the great Chicago Park District leadership, each of whom played an instrumental role in making this possible. Thank you. So we stand in the shadow of the sculpture, self-portrait, by the late and iconic artist and activist Keith Haring. And it has anchored this site for so many years, reminding us of the enduring legacy in the movement to educate on and to end the devastating HIV epidemic. It's with Keith's spirit and in memory of every life lost to HIV and AIDS here in Chicago that we dedicate this garden, hallowed ground that we stand upon. Activists like Keith, the powerful story in the AIDS Garden Chicago Story Archive, and so many others whose tireless work to raise awareness and destigmatize living with HIV have brought us closer to winning the fight against AIDS. Today, we recommit ourselves to continuing their good and necessary work. By God, we will get to zero. This garden is considered a park with a purpose, and it is just that. This is a historic place, a place of joy, a place of remembrance, a park that feels sometimes like a time capsule to the early days of the LGBTQ+ movement, where the community gathered to live proudly and openly as all people deserve to. There's so much history that I think we all carry with us about this movement. In many years ago, for some of the younger people that are here, before Equality Illinois was known as Equality Illinois, there was the Illinois Federation for Human Rights. And the march, the Pride March, was a protest march. There weren't the rights that I think are enjoyed today, and the elected officials who stand up for the rights of the LGBTQ+ community that there are now. And I'm very proud to have been part of that many years ago, to have continued my advocacy for these many years, and to now stand with great leaders like the mayor, like the alderman, like so many of our state reps and state senators who stand up for this community. The path here that visitors walk allows us to reflect on the progress that the LGBTQ community has made and reminds us how much further we have yet to go. At a time when states across the nation are taking away rights and criminalizing LGBTQ+ families and communities, we are here in Illinois, in the land of Lincoln, in the land of the free, to uplift the queer community and ensure that this state stands up for LGBTQ+ rights and freedoms no matter what. With members of the General Assembly together, I'm very proud that we've been able to dedicate 1.5 million. I guess I'm writing the check, so I'll say it's 1.5 million. And that was critical legislation to make Illinois a safer and more inclusive state where everyone is treated with dignity, including those living with HIV. I'm excited, I truly am, to celebrate the progress that we've made, but I know our work isn't done. As we stand here, AIDS Garden Chicago holds in it both the immeasurable losses sustained from the epidemic, as well as the vibrant and powerful hope of this community. With our collective and affirming vision, the people of this city and of this state recommit ourselves to living up to the values and the pride represented by this beautiful landmark. Thank you very much. It is now my great pleasure to introduce my partner in governance. She is the best lieutenant governor the state has ever had, the incomparable Juliana Stratton.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Pride. My name is Juliana Stratton, and I use she, her pronouns. Governor Pritzker, it's always such an honor to serve the people of Illinois by your side. Thank you so much for those wonderful remarks and that kind introduction. And thank you, Alderman Tom Tunney, for your leadership and all that you have done to make this garden a reality. The governor has already acknowledged all of the elected officials and special guests joining us today. So in the interest of time, I'll just say to Mayor Lightfoot and all of the elected officials and special guests, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your leadership. I'm so grateful for your presence this morning. Thanks to your shared commitment to equal rights, Chicago now has a living remembrance to those we have lost to HIV and AIDS. As we gather this morning, many of us are remembering the friends, family members, partners, neighbors, so many, disproportionately from our LGBTQ+ communities, and all who are gone too soon. May this be a place of peace, connection, healing, and remembering. Many residents know this space because of famed artist Keith Haring's self-portrait sculpture, which serves as the centerpiece of the AIDS Garden Chicago. As an icon of the LGBTQ+ movement, Keith Haring used his position as an artist to end the stigma and give hope to those living with HIV and AIDS. And his legacy continues to inspire us all and reminds us to stand up for those who have been left out and left behind. I loved learning that this area of the lakeshore was chosen due to being the original location of the Belmont Rocks, a space where Chicago's LGBTQ+ residents didn't have to hide, where they could gather and find community and safety and be their authentic selves in broad daylight from the 1960s to 1990s. The rocks served as a symbol of their right to exist as the people they were born to be, and that is exactly what JB and I want for all Illinoisans in every corner of our state. We are so proud to join community leaders and advocates as we dedicate this space to the memory of Chicagoans who have lost their lives to the HIV and AIDS epidemic. We will never stop fighting for Illinois' LGBTQ+ community and the rights and freedoms they deserve. We will keep doing the necessary work of getting to zero and ending HIV. We will keep working to ensure that those living with HIV get the health care and support they deserve and need. Thank you for that one person who supports that. We will continue to fight the stigma and educate Black and brown communities to ensure equitable access to resources. And together, we will make Illinois a state that recognizes the dignity of every person's existence. May the AIDS Chicago Garden serve as a daily reminder of how far we've come and how much farther we have to go in uplifting the vibrant legacies of all that we have lost. And may we live up to their selfless example as we seek to create a state where all are welcomed and loved beyond measure. As I close, I just want to say that Black trans lives matter. Thank you for having me. And Alderman Tunney, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I have the honor to introduce my friend and our leader for many years in the community, Greg Harris.
I was first diagnosed with HIV in 1988, and then with full-blown AIDS in 1990. And I'd love to be here today, consecrating this ground, looking out at a sea of my friends and my associates and my colleagues and the people that used to hang out here with me. But they're all dead. Most of them are dead. I see just a handful of people, gay men of my age, who survived the epidemic. And so this is a memorial to those guys and to the thousands of folks I never knew and that others never knew their names or ever cared for, who died from AIDS. But more importantly, it's a monument to the thousands and thousands of people who at the time when government was turning its back on the LGBT community, there were thousands and thousands of people of every part of the city, every sexual orientation, every gender identity, every part of every neighborhood who stood up and came out and supported their LGBT neighbors, even when others were turning their backs. And it was a wonderful moment in history when we pushed that change that the mayor mentioned and the governor mentioned. But we need to learn from that because history repeats itself. And we know that all these hard-fought rights, these advances in our society and our culture, can be gone in an instant if we are not constantly vigilant. And we each do our part. Remember, back then there was no treatment for AIDS. There was no research for AIDS. There was no cure for AIDS. It was a death sentence. You got your HIV diagnosis. My doctor told me when I got mine, plan on living about 6 more months. That was the reality of the situation. It was perfectly legal for people to be fired from their jobs for being HIV positive if your employer found out. You could lose your health insurance if people found out you tested positive for HIV. You could be denied health care in some institutions because people did not want folks with HIV in their facilities. And sadly, a lot of us saw our friends, families abandon them because of the stigma and the hatred generated by the right wing toward people with HIV and LGBT people in general. We had a president who didn't care, and politicians who used our community as punching bags and for cheap political points. I'll just mention, I think people forget back in the 1980s when this came along, our president at the time who would not say HIV, now we have some who don't want to say gay, this one would not say HIV, never did. And his campaign slogan at the time was, "Let's make America great again." Let's make America great again. So what has gone before is coming back around. It is the power of everyday people, most of whom have never been organizers or volunteers or caregivers, who came together to make sure that their friends and strangers alike had food and a roof over their head, and pastoral care and spiritual counseling and legal assistance and even basic health care. And at the end of life, that there was somebody near them and that there was hospice care available for people as they died, which most people surely did. We also demanded back then the government respond and act on prohibiting discrimination and act on researching for a cure and expanding access to health care out into all our communities. And we changed our country for the better. But sadly, current events teach us that the same forces are using the same political points to demonize the LGBT community once again. They're not just coming for gays and lesbians this time, they're coming for trans folks, and they're coming for LGBT and trans kids. The same types are at the Supreme Court, attacking a fundamental right for reproductive health care and abortion. They're in the states fighting health care and expansion of health care to poor folks. They're in the states fighting against voting rights and to suppress the vote. And ladies and gentlemen, Tom said, well, this will never happen again. I'm afraid this could easily happen again if we are not vigilant. And we're blessed to live in a state right now where we have elected officials who are standing here today recognizing us and supporting our values, but they could be gone in an instant if people do not come out and vote in every election that's coming up. And be sure you choose people who reflect the values that the people who gave their lives for this garden stood up for. So it's an honor to be there. and the memory of those who can't be with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Next up, we have our former state rep, Yoni Pizer, who's also the chair of the board of AIDS Garden Chicago. Instrumental in, with Margaret, getting this deal past the House, and of course, Sarah in the Senate. Yoni? Where you? Oh.
Right behind you. Hello and good morning. I'm Yoni Pizer, board chair for AIDS Garden Chicago. Before I say anything else, I know there have been a lot of thank yous, but I just wanted to thank Osiris for your beautiful spoken word. I also wanted to thank the Chicago Gay Men's Chorus for their beautiful songs, which again we'll hear more from. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank our signers and everyone for security today. So thank you. Thank you. On behalf of the board of Chicago AIDS Garden, I wanted to welcome everyone here and this thrilling, beautiful day, which has been so long in coming. This indeed is a park with a purpose. This project, which seeks to honor, respect, remember, educate, and celebrate, is destined to become a true Chicago landmark. And this has been an incredible collaborative effort among public officials, neighborhood organizations, private foundations, and community members, many of whom are here today with us. I wanted to personally just quickly thank three people without whom this project absolutely would not have happened. Alderman Tom Tunney, who I consider a dear friend, thank you for your vision, and thank you for your tenacity. Willa Lang, head of the Chicago Parks Foundation. You and your team are unbelievable. And also Chris Jessup, I see you back there. Thank you for pushing this project forward when it didn't seem like it was going to be possible. I just want to do a quick shout out to and welcome Tony Walsh, an AIDS activist and Irish LGBTQ historian who is here all the way from Ireland, and he is currently working on Belfast's AIDS Memorial and wanted to be with us today. So, Tony, welcome to Chicago. The AIDS Garden Chicago Board is still in formation, and as we look to the future, we'll be casting a wide net to ensure that this is not only a garden honoring the past, but also the next generation. To this end, we will be partnering with Lurie's Children's Hospital Adolescent Health Program to collaborate on how we can support the next generation together. I think I can speak for everyone on this today when I say this particular project is incredibly important to the LGBT community, not only to remember the many lives lost, but also as an enduring symbol of strength, perseverance, and unity of a determined community, along with our allies in the fight against HIV and AIDS. I must say the importance of this project has taken on new meaning in the light of the current pandemic and our current fraught political climate, which many of the speakers today have referenced. The COVID-19 pandemic, like the HIV/AIDS pandemic, disproportionately has affected Black and brown and disadvantaged communities. So this garden will forever remind us of those we've lost and those affected by HIV and AIDS, and that we must never forget. Never forget those we've lost, never forget the forces of hate and indifference which decimated our community. Never forget those who cared for our friends and family when they were abandoned by their families and their government. And never forget those brave individuals who acted up. This memorial will also serve as a symbol of hope and the resilience of this community and our allies, and the will, power, perseverance of any community under siege, even in the face of a horrible global pandemic. As we walked to this place, many of you may have noticed the stanchions with the QR codes on them. These QR codes are linked to recently recorded stories from community members directly affected by HIV and AIDS. They're community members, caregivers, doctors, activists. But I want to emphasize this is just the beginning. More stories from more perspectives will be recorded, and stories and storytellers will rotate as we expand our reach and make available this oral quilt within the garden for visitors to hear and see for generations to come. To listen and see these stories and let us know that you'd like to tell your own story, please visit aidsgardenchicago.org. We'd love to hear from you. I want to publicly thank all of those who took time a couple weeks ago out of their busy schedules to tell their stories and be part of our inaugural story journey in the garden. Greg Harris, John Peller, Owen Keenan, who along with Victor Salvo and Tracy Baim are treasured Chicago LGBTQ historians. Thank you. Lori Cannon, David Munar, Gibran Villalobos, Sidney Thomas, Ray Lewis Thornton, Shrag Badlani, Dr. Ross Slotin, and Don Bell. Thank you very much for taking your time. A lot has been made about how this is hallowed ground, and I just want to say that this ground means a lot to me personally because my husband, Brad Lippitz, and I were lucky enough to be able to be at the rocks. And if you ask nicely, I'll even show you a picture of the two of us in 1989, and I'm full of puka shells, so you know it's from 1989. But this is just a special place, and I can't tell you how much it means to me personally to have you all here and to have this amazing space. And now it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Rosa Escarino, CEO of the Chicago Parks District. Ms. Escarino oversees one of the largest park systems in the country with over 8,800 acres of parkland, more than 600 parks, 26 miles of lakefront, 12 museums, 2 world-class conservatories, 16 historic lagoons, and over 75 nature areas, including this one, and thousands of special events, sports, and entertainment programs. Prior to her appointment as Park District CEO by Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Ms. Escarino served in the mayor's administration as Commissioner of City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. She holds a degree of Master's of Science in Communications from Northwestern University and a degree of Bachelor of Arts from Loyola University. Born in Zacatecas, Mexico, she's a lifelong Chicagoan and resides in the Hermosa community on Chicago's northwest side. Please welcome CEO.
Wow, thank you so much. It is my honor to welcome all of you to the City of Chicago's first public garden, honoring individuals whose lives have been impacted by AIDS. The AIDS Garden also symbolizes the work being done across the entire city to combat AIDS through awareness, education, and support. And as the mayor and the governor have already said, our goal is 0, and we are on our way. As we know, AIDS does not discriminate. There is a community within our great city that is left untouched by, there is no community that is left untouched by the impact. And so it underscores the importance of this garden. As we continue to provide awareness and education, this is a reminder for all of us to be committed to that goal. And while this is one of our newest destinations within our park system, I expect this beautiful garden to become the city's most treasured gem. But even more than that, this park will become the beacon of hope, strength, compassion, and unity for residents across our great city. For all Chicagoans, this is your garden. This is your garden of hope, your garden of peace, your garden of freedom, and your garden of purpose. And it really touches me to know that for years, this has been the destination for communities that have felt unloved and unwelcomed. And like every park across our city, our parks are those places of hope, of freedom and unity, and of community. So I want to thank all the elected officials, and I know that they've been thanked, but I want all our residents to know that the majority of the projects that happen across our park system, including the care and maintenance of these projects, cannot happen without the support of all of these legislators here and our mayor. And I also want to acknowledge our First Lady, because she is doing great work for our youth across the city. We are great partners, and I just want to acknowledge her today as well. But I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because we will need the support to continue to make sure that these places exist and that continue as beautiful as they are today. Without that support, it will be hard to keep these parks as beautiful. So thank you again, and I will see you soon again, coming back to you for more and more, because our people need it, and our parks really, really deserve it. I want to say a special thanks to a friend. I consider him a friend. I've been working with him, and he's always been so supportive. But all the work that Alderman Tom Tunney that has done to really bring this park to fruition, his vision, and all of the community that he has brought together to get that done. I also would like to finally acknowledge the team at the Park District, who has worked very closely with our Chicago Park District Foundation and with Willa to ensure that all of the trees, that all of the lawn, that everything that you see here, our staff, and I see Beth here and I see many others from the Park District that are here every day committed to making sure these projects get done. And I do not want to forget to honor and to thank a specific person, member of our Park District Board of Commissioner, Tico Valle, Commissioner Valle, who also serves at the Center on Halsted. Thank you for your leadership in the community and making sure that our support continues. Finally, I just want to say, Willa and the entire board, thank you, Willa, for everything. It works tirelessly to get these things done. And if you will just allow me just a couple more minutes to address my community. De parte del Distrito de Parques, le quiero dar las gracias al alcalde Lori Lightfoot y al gobernador Pritzker por todo lo que hacen para brindar estos proyectos, parques públicos a la ciudad de Chicago. Este jardín es un jardín para todas las víctimas que no solo sufrieron y que han muerto y dado su vida, pero para esas personas que aún están sufriendo con el SIDA o AIDS, que por tantos años continúa. Nuestra meta es asegurar que esas comunidades que muchas veces se sienten rechazadas y que no tienen voz, que hoy tienen un jardín público en el cual pueden llamar casa, en el cual pueden venir, sentirse libres. Es un jardín de esperanza, de propósito y de paz. Invito al público a que vengan y le quiero dar las gracias a todos los legisladores aquí, porque sin el fondo y los fondos del gobierno y de la fundación ha hecho este proyecto realidad. Le doy las gracias a todos ustedes. Les quiero dar la bienvenida a su jardín público y que a toda la comunidad que hoy se siente rechazada, la comunidad LGBTQ, que se sientan en casa. Chicago abre sus brazos a todas las comunidades y que específicamente las comunidades afroamericanas y la comunidad latina continúa peleando con este síndrome de SIDA, y hay que brindar reconocimiento a esas personas y seguir uniéndonos, apoyar a estos esfuerzos. Le quiero dar las gracias a todos. And with that, I'll turn it back to Alderman Tunney.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Before we finish the program, I'm going to ask just a warm round of Chicago's applause for Mr. Vasquez from the Keith Haring Foundation, came in from New York. Let's give... And actually, I believe the work of the Keith Haring Foundation and the synergy of what we're doing here today is very compatible, and hopefully we will grow that relationship in the years to come. So with that being said, thanks everyone, and it's all about community. This is an amazing community. We've got a lot more work to do with AIDSGardenChicago.org. Please help if you can help remember a lost one. There's opportunities to remember that financially, but there's also a working group, community garden group, which we're really very proud of. This is our third or fourth in the ward, so extremely excited about opportunities for the community to not only enjoy and in this peaceful garden, but to actually do some work and keep it running strong. So I know that our governor is not is moving on to Andersonville, I thought, or something like that. So. All right, but thank you, and I know that at this time I'm going to put the mic back to Mayor Lightfoot.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Appreciate it. Members of the media, Alejandra and I will bring down the mics to you. 2 questions per reporters. On-topic questions first. Any on-topic?
I do have something on topic.
All right,
so,
Jen Salvo, NBC.
Thank you, guys. Mayor Lightfoot, so if you can for a second, put yourself back into the position. Young Glory, law student in the 80s, lesbian hanging out here at Belmont Rocks. If you brought Young Glory here today, how would she feel about this area and the city, the progress and the growth to, as Governor Pritzker said, live openly and proudly as a gay person in Chicago?
Well, in the 80s, it was really hard to imagine. And what I didn't say in my earlier comments is I saw Black and brown, gay and lesbian men and women for really the first time. And there were drag queens. I mean, literally every stripe, flavor, image from our community came here after the parade. And it was just this kind of magical, eye-opening moment for me that I could see myself living openly as a lesbian in a city. And it's a memory I will never forget. It's an experience that I will never forget. So it was really magical to me. And to think this many years later, here I stand in my position as mayor to really be part of memorializing this really sacred ground is such an incredible honor. I mean, it's really humbling and overwhelming at the same time, but it's also a great thing.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rob Sneed, WGN. All right.
There you go.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Question for you.
Yes.
And just the start of Pride, I've done some Pride stories yesterday and today as well, and I keep hearing that you guys have made progress. There's been progress made within the LGBTQ community, but there's still more that needs to be done.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about that, and what progress needs to be done?
Well, I think there's a lot that needs to be done. When you look at both the challenges here in Chicago and really across the country for our trans brothers and sisters, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not only to make sure that their lives are celebrated in the same ways that other members of the community are, but that they're protected. You see this kind of sweep of laws being passed across the southern states and red states that are going right at the heart of the trans community and trying to demonize and isolate them. That tells me that more work needs to be done. I mean, my perspective as a gay Black woman is that if anyone anywhere is threatened and their rights are threatened, so are mine. It may not be me this moment, but I feel very strongly that if we don't stand up, given the challenges that the LGBTQ plus community has faced over the years, we've got to be united with our Asian brothers and sisters. We've got to be united with the Orthodox and Jewish community. We've got to be united wherever we see hate and discrimination, because unfortunately, I think Leader Harris is right. Our rights are always under siege, and the only way we remain protected is if we remain diligent and alert. And so I do know very clearly there's a lot of progress that's been made. I wouldn't be standing here today as an openly lesbian mayor if there hadn't been progress, but I also know that we can't rest, we can't pat ourselves on the back and think we've arrived at the promised land, because our democracy is always going to be a work in progress. There's going to be ebbs, there's going to be flows, there's going to be plateaus, and so we've got to keep diligently working at it.
And my second question is a little off topic, but any type of statement or comment regarding yesterday's shooting, message to the officer, message to the community?
Yeah, we issued a statement last night about this. Look, I think the thing that is most horrifying to me is that uniformed officers in a marked squad were purposely targeted and attacked. And there's been some progress made today, but I don't want to get ahead of things. Thank goodness the officer who was shot is recovering from her injuries. And I'm hoping that there will be continued significant progress overnight. I checked in this morning, as I did obviously several times last night. But I think what it underscores is we have to remember that men and women in the police department are the only ones who run towards danger. They protect us every single day, 7 days a week, every watch, 24 hours a day. And yes, we need to make more progress on reform, but we cannot lose sight that they are risking their lives literally every day for our safety. And yesterday, unfortunately, was a stark reminder. Thank goodness that this young officer did not lose her life. Her partner acted quickly and drove her to the hospital, and one of the finest hospitals in the nation, and unfortunately one with a lot of experience in treating gunshot victims. But we have to make sure that we're continuing and diligently thanking our officers for the sacrifices they make. I said to the superintendent, spare no expense, get our federal partners involved. We need to make sure that the person who's responsible for this is brought to justice, and I'm hoping that we'll see that there's an arrest that's made relatively soon.
Thanks, Mayor. Jeff, positively aware.
Thank you. Mayor Lightfoot, I'm a long-term survivor of HIV, and I know a lot of my fellow long-term survivors are here today. Greg Harris, Representative Harris, spoke very eloquently about...
His words were unbelievably powerful.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed a year after Greg, and what we're finding now is a lot of long-term survivors are facing PTSD, mental health issues, social isolation, and, discrimination, as many of us who are LGBTQ go into long-term care facilities and facing, having to go back into the closet. So I'm just wondering what your administration is doing to focus on the needs of long-term survivors of the AIDS epidemic.
Well, that is a great question, and obviously some of the $40 million that we are allocating annually is going in that direction, but I think you raise a really good point. We need to make sure that there's more supportive housing for people in our community, and particularly those who are long-term survivors. I think we've also got to make sure that we continue our education efforts, because the discrimination still exists. There's a lot of people now, having come through the 70s and 80s or born after that, who don't understand and appreciate the challenges that long-term survivors of HIV/AIDS are continuing to struggle with. So the cycle continues, but we have, I think, very diligently, and will continue through our Department of Public Health and our community partners, making sure that we are doing everything we can to be supportive of the community. I appreciate you very much sharing your story, and I will make sure that I check in again with our folks and see if there's more that we can and should be doing to be supportive of folks like you, because it's frankly, given where the government was, the lack of concern or care or health care, it's a miracle, as you well know, that you're still here with us, but it's also a blessing for you, for Greg, for others, and we've got to make sure that we honor and support your lives.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll pass it to Alejandra with Lisa, WBBM.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi there.
Good morning.
How are you?
Little off topic. The list of people who want your job is growing. We've got another candidate today with Alderman Sawyer. Just kind of reaction and maybe any kind of hints about when you might make a decision?
So, another day, another man who thinks he can do his job better than me. I'm just going to keep doing my work. I'm not going to worry about the folks who are jumping in. I think I feel very comfortable with the list of accomplishments. And what I've got to do is just keep telling our story. And I say our story. Really, it's the story of Chicagoans. It's not about me. It's not about my accomplishments. It's about what we've done and delivered on behalf of the residents of the city. And I feel confident that as we tell that story and more people start to hear it, and frankly, the testimonials from the people that have been helped, we're going to be in very good shape. So stay tuned. Soon it's shrinking, as in next week. Next week.
All right, Leah Hope, ABC.
Oh, thank you. Actually, you answered my question. So thank you for your comments, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being here.
Heather Sharon, WTTW.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi there.
Can you tell me why that you do not support the ethics proposal drafted by Alderman Michelle Smith?
That's not correct. I don't know if I support it or not because I haven't seen it. And so we're going to continue. I've been in a deep conversation with Alderman Smith. We'll continue to talk to each other and work through the details as I come to understand what's actually in the proposal, and I'm confident that we'll be able to move forward together.
Okay. Building off of Alderman Sawyer's announcement this morning, about a year ago, you told WTTW that you believed about 99% of the criticism you got as Chicago mayor was because you're a black woman. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like anything has changed over the last year?
No. Look, I see some of the women in the audience. Women are always going to be judged by a different lens, and people of color are always judged by a different lens. That's just the reality of our lives. I think people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community in leadership are judged through a different lens. That's just the reality of life in America. I'm a big believer in playing the cards that we're dealt, and I'm going to keep doing what I think is right on behalf of residents of the city.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Thanks, everyone. That's a wrap. Have a great day.
Thank you all.